Hello everyone, I'm Papa Kenn and welcome to a brand new episode of Discovering Breaking Bad. Today, the episode I'm going to be talking about is The Cat's in the Bag, the second episode of the first season. And let me say this. A friend of mine commented on a post that I made of the first episode and said that the first, I believe he said either 5 or 6 episodes of this show are a bit slow. Now, the first one, I would disagree. I thought the first one was really good. The second episode here, though, I can kind of agree. Not a lot happens. It's very much a story-driven episode with not a lot of events. Now, I don't know how many episodes in the future, especially in later seasons, it's going to be more story-driven as opposed to action, if there's really any in there, or like real intrigue. But this episode did admittedly feel a bit slow, especially for it being what I can only assume is sort of a part 1 to part 2, which the next episode is the bags in the river, I believe. But yeah, overall this episode did feel just a bit slow, but it was still interesting despite that. Now, as I mentioned before, I'm going to have my top 5 moments of this episode, and there were quite a few. I actually had to shorten the list a bit and knock out a few because there were quite a few very interesting moments throughout this episode. And also, I do have a favorite quote, which it came down between 2. There was one that I really liked, but, you know, I'll mention that later. I'll get right into this episode. Basically, The Cat's in the Bag is basically the events immediately following what happened in the previous episode. It's sort of the fallout of what they did and basically having to at least start cleaning up their mess, both Jesse and Walt. And during that time, they argue a lot. I know I mentioned in the previous episode that one of my estimates is that Jesse is going to grow to find Walt to be sort of a father figure. I'm still holding on to that estimate, but I love their arguments. The arguments and their dialogue is just awesome. I absolutely love it, and I give it up to both the writers, and also both of the actors. They just did a really good job of that, and I hope it continues throughout the rest of the episodes. And also during this episode, Walter tells Skyler that Jesse sells him pot to sort of cover up for the actual story, obviously. And the confrontation, this is actually a combination of 2 moments that, I guess will be honorable mentions. But basically, when Walt tells Skyler that Jesse sells him pot, he says, "I kind of like it." Like that was just a really good moment. And also when Skyler confronts Jesse to tell him to not sell Walt any more pot. Those 2 scenes were really good, and I really liked them, and almost made my top 5 moments of the episode list. Now, also let me say this. Even though these are numbered, the moments are not in any particular order exactly. They're going to be mostly chronological, but unless there's one that's just like absolutely my best, they're all basically just favorite moments in no particular order. Now, to start off with, my first favorite moment of the episode actually started in the beginning, and it's when both Jesse and Walt realize that one of the guys that they killed in the previous episode is not dead. And just the look of terror on their faces is priceless. It is just so perfect. And again, I give it up to the actors. The way you have to act just to portray that emotion on your face, they did a great job. It was just such a perfect moment in this episode. Now, the second favorite moment in this episode would be when Skyler discovers Jesse's webpage because she tracked his number from where he had called previously, and while searching through it, he on his page he mentions that he loves MILFs, and she basically says, "What the hell is a MILF?" And I don't know. I'm sure this is me just being immature, like insanely immature, but just that moment was absolutely hilarious to me because, I mean, I know what it is, and I'm assuming you do. If not, Google it, but not if you are around kids or at work, because that would be really stupid. But just that line alone, it doesn't make it into my quotes, but that moment is just perfect. Now, my third favorite moment of this episode would be when Walt actually tries rolling a blunt or rolling a joint for himself. It is just it's a hilarious segment watching him like trying and failing to roll a joint. And I mean, after when he finally lights up, it's interesting. But just the entire little segment of him trying and failing it's priceless and just such a great segment in this episode. Now, my fourth favorite moment of this episode is when Walt actually stands up for himself to Skyler because she's been getting on to him. She's suspected him of something being wrong the entire episode, and this is actually right after he tells her that Jesse sells him pot, and I believe the line is. Actually, I can't even remember the line, but basically, he tells her to get off of his ass, and that. I like the Skylar character, but in this episode especially, she has been just very, very much up in his ass. I mean, it was a little bit in the first episode, but especially in this episode. And I loved that line, just the way he stood up to her and said that line. I mean, I'm not saying, whether it's good or not of him to say that, but just that moment was priceless. And actually, I will say it was good because, I mean, the character of Walt is always been a pushover, and for him to actually stand up for himself, other than obviously the violence that he did in the first episode, was just really good and something I appreciated it for the character. And it was just really well done, and I liked that. Now, my final favorite moment of this episode came literally right at the end, and that's when well, basically, in order to get rid of the actual dead body, they used hydrochloric acid to melt the body. And Jesse was supposed to get a plastic tub, which apparently hydrochloric acid will not melt. Instead of doing so, Jesse just put the body in a bathtub and poured the hydrochloric acid on it. And the moment itself is when the floor underneath the tub, or basically the ceiling of where they are, is just dripping, and then just everything dissolves and falls through, leaving this horrid, bloody, acidic. It's just horribly nasty. But that mess, that was just such a disgusting, disturbing, and hilarious moment for this episode. And I know, I mean, if you're weak of stomach, you probably don't watch the show anyway, but I mean, it's not a scene for the weak of stomach, but I find it hilarious just because of the conversation they're having immediately before, and I just love it. Again, I would actually say that probably is my favorite moment of the episode, but yeah, that's the final favorite moment of this episode, and I guess possibly my favorite, whatever. Now, moving on from that to get into my favorite quote from this episode. Now, there was a runner-up, and that is Jesse's voicemail. Now, I'm not even going to try to quote it because I would not do it justice, but if you watch the show, you know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, go to Google and look up Jesse Pinkman's voicemail and find a sound clip if possible. It's just hilarious. It's stupid and very much a white boy trying to be a gangster, well, I guess he is a gangster, but anyway, I absolutely love that voicemail, but it is not my favorite quote of this episode. My favorite quote of the episode is, in fact, it's right after Walt and Skyler find out that they're going to have a daughter, like it's going to be a girl, and Walt tells Skyler that he was, that's what he was hoping for, and she tells him, remember that when she's 16, when she turns 16 and starts dating. And that might even be a favorite moment too, but that quote right there, remember that when she's 16 and starts dating. Him knowing he has terminal cancer, her not knowing, but that quote right there is just, it sinks right to your gut, and it hurts. It's like you hurt for Walt because you know he's not going to be there. That's just the unfortunate truth. He's not going to be there, and it's sad and depressing, but it's just such a powerful moment. And I mean, it's very short-lived, but again, that's just my favorite quote of the episode because I mean, no other line in the entire episode had that like that emotional punch to it. So I really love that. And really, I guess that's most of what I had to say about this particular episode. As I said before, it was a bit slow. I hope that it picks up a bit more. But from what a friend of mine told me, it's probably not going to for a few more episodes, but I am enjoying the story, and I'm looking forward to see what happens next, especially immediately following the events of a dissolved body falling through dissolved floor into Jesse's house and having to clean that crap up. I'm really interested to see what happens next, and I hope you all are too. Now, I hope you enjoyed what I had to say about this episode. And leave any of your thoughts below down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. Try to not make it too spoilery for me because this was literally the last episode that I've actually seen, and I want the rest of it to be a surprise for me if possible. I appreciate people, just saying, being very not eclectic. What am I trying to say? Basically, people being vague about what they're saying, like having to do with my estimates. So either my estimates are completely wrong, or they're right but not completely right. So I really want to see what happens. So again, it's like if there's some spoilers, the show has been over with already for a little while, so I'm not overly concerned with that. But try not to ruin everything if possible. Okay. But everyone, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time on the next Discovering Breaking Bad for the episode, And the Bags in the River. Later.